You are listening to 600 Second Saga. Today's feature is Berserk by Kate Rauner. The raiders beached their ship under a full moon and, now on the shore, stood adjusting scabbards and tightening straps on their armor. Eirik watched the 5 men who would lead them to move away from the forest's edge. Their teeth began chattering as if the cool night was midwinter, and yet they pulled off their shirts, revealing deeply scarred torsos, shivering so violently they could hardly control their fingers. The 5 tied strips of bear hide and wolf skin around their waists, and bound cords strung with claws and teeth to their arms. One tied the skull of a freshly killed wolf atop his head. "Stay well behind," the captain said. Eirik needed no reminder, for these 5 were berserkers, and when in the grip of a Hamrami fit, they could not tell friend from foe. Eirik had joined the ship as soon as his age permitted, and raided with the crew all season. A few scars healed on his own body, but he didn't understand the transformation he was watching. What made the berserkers invincible? Was it their magic? The captain shook his head when asked. The frenzy comes or not, as the gods wish. The faces of the bare-chested men seemed to swell and darken, until one pitched back his head and howled. The sound sent a chill of terror through Eirik, even though he was about to follow these men into battle. Hefting axes, the berserkers raced inland with 24 raiders barely keeping pace behind them. The villagers should be asleep, but a few must have heard the approaching marauders. A figure emerged from a hut, shouting the alarm. Men and women poured forth in screaming confusion. Eirik swung his sword at the figures that moved like black ghosts, some running, some falling into the shadows. A mass of embers flew up before him, and Eirik found himself beside a berserker. He watched the man kick a banked cooking fire into flames and hurl the logs at the nearest hut. Fire raced up the wall and across the roof. A villager burst from the hut, and the berserker wielded his axe, burying it in the fool's head. Then he tugged back with such force that half the head split away and hit Eirik in the chest. Blood and brains splattered over him as Eirik clutched reflexively at the severed head. A scream burned in his throat, and he threw the horrible thing away. The berserker, his eyes showing whites all around, fixed him with a stare. "Jonsson," the captain called the berserker's name, and the man staggered as if struck. His arms dropped to his sides, resting his axe on the ground. "Sten, Balder, Frode, Ulf." The captain called each berserker by his true name, and the Hamrami fit left them. They stood still, dazed and bewildered. "Eirik, take Jonsson back to the ship." Shaking violently, Eirik reached for Jonsson's hand and led him like a child. He thanked the gods for the captain's orders, because Eirik wanted nothing more than to scrub himself clean in the sea. The image of that severed half-head clung to Eirik, leapt at him in his dreams, and appeared in ghostly white, even during the daylight whenever he shut his eyes. His crewmates were all seasoned raiders, the veterans of many years. They would laugh if he told them about the severed head. Days at sea were welcome, because Eirik feared for the first time that he might not have the courage to swing his sword again. Were such shame to befall him, he could never return home. Upon regaining the ship, the berserkers had collapsed, as if dead into their leather bedding sacks, and would sleep for days. The captain waited patiently, steering far out to sea to remain hidden from the coast. Eirik cleaned his sword and armor, fished off the stern, and took his turn rowing the long, narrow ship when the winds failed. But he didn't boast of his skills with the others, or gloat over the iron tools and weapons they'd seized. Listening to them swagger made Eirik close his eyes, and closing his eyes brought terrible visions. At last, the berserkers awoke, ravenous. The captain ordered smoked meat and fish to be brought at once and unfolded his maps. The monastery of Lindisfarne was a short journey away, and would be a rich prize. The night was dark when they next beached ashore. Only starlight glinted from their blades as Eirik jumped into the water scarcely over his knees. The berserkers withdrew and faced inland. It must be colder than he'd thought, because Eirik began to shiver. The fear in his heart froze to a clear crystal of ice. He must have over-tightened his armor because his chest could barely expand with each breath. Rage grew inside until it threatened to split him open. Eirik tossed aside his iron helmet and fumbled at the leather straps until his armor fell away. He rose and strode to the berserkers, teeth chattering as his chest swelled. He had found the terrible magic. This was Berserk by Kate Rauner. Berserk was published in Jupiter Diving and Other Short Reads in Science Fiction and Fantasy by Kate Rauner. Check our show notes for links. More work can be found at katerauner.wordpress.com. Kate writes science fiction novels and science-inspired poetry. She's also a retired engineer and Cold War warrior. Honestly, that's what Congress called them, because she worked in America's nuclear weapons complex. Much to her surprise, she has a second unpaid career as a volunteer firefighter. She left the beautiful but crowded Front Range of Colorado to live on the edge of New Mexico's Gila National Forest with her husband, cats, llamas, and dog. She's well on her way to achieving her life goal of becoming an eccentric old woman. Read more from Kate on Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, and more. Check our show notes for links. Music is provided by Mads. Learn more about 600 Second Saga, our authors, how to submit your flash fiction, and how to support the podcast in the show notes. This has been Mariah Avix and 600 Second Saga.